Next, a man who brings such quality to political journalism, chief political correspondent, despite the fact he's the youngest of the son who spent Christmas in Barbados while I was in bed. Jack Elsom, how are you, son?
Not bad, thank you. Not bad. I wish I was in Barbados. My parents landed today. Do not mention anything. No. Which I told you.
I love life. Right, anyway, how are you, son?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not bad.
I really am sort of fascinated to get as many different people's opinions about what the hell's going on. I'm going to start with actually yesterday's news. If you are what I would call a normal British hard-working person, and you hear on a show like this, or you read in the Telegraph, or you get picked up on newsstands, that over the last 24 hours, you can avoid deportation from this country, right? If you go to a left-wing a left-wing lawyer paid for by the taxpayer who goes to a court who instigates something from the ECHR, and you tell them three things as follows. One, my child don't like chicken nuggets from Albania. It's not even funny, is it? My husband would find the Caribbean too hot. And I know I'm a paedophile, but it would harm my children if they were made to move. Notwithstanding what you've done to kids, you piece of whatever. Mate, we're becoming, I said it earlier to Nigel Evans, we're a laughing stock very soon. That is ludicrous from a moral point of view more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is a growing school of thought in this country that the ECHR, which we signed up to in the 1950s, just is totally different than what it was meant to be, and is basically frustrating the will of national governments to kick out people that we don't like.
Right, so stop right there. There's a feeling in this country, I haven't met anybody who thinks that the ECR is fit for purpose. 1950, that was 75 years ago. Surely, I mean, we joke about Badenoch and you haven't said anything. I mean, the first thing that any would-be Prime Minister in this country needs to do is stand up and say, we are leaving the ECHR. Generic tried it, didn't win the title, did he?
Yeah, and a lot of people now think that it's basically become a political organisation. I mean, parking all of the stuff to do with courts and rapists. I mean, there was in fact, there's a horrible case the other day about a Jamaican man that raped a sleeping woman and then said he couldn't be deported because he'd be discriminated against in Jamaica because he suddenly coughed that he was bisexual. I mean, people will look at these stories and they seem to be in the news every single day.
But mate, these are the ones that go, I'm bisexual, or I've just been, I've been christened a Christian in the River Thames with Russell Brand. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and right-minded people in this country will look at these stories and just think, what on earth is going on? But it's not just rapists and paedophiles. They're encroaching on a lot of our life, whether that's illegal migration, whether that is our net zero policies. You remember that ruling in Switzerland, which they essentially overruled the national government, where they said they weren't doing enough to cut down on carbon emissions. Now, why a court feels that's in their jurisdiction feels to a lot of people like complete judicial overreach. And, Keir Starmer is pretty wedded to the European Court, so there's never going to be an argument in the Labour Party about whether we leave or not. You would think there is a growing school of thought in the Tory Party that we should do so, but Kemi Badenoch seems to be almost pussyfooting around that at the moment and is leaving all of that space to Nigel Farage, who's been pretty crystal clear that he would do it in a heartbeat.
And it's interesting, that's the other subject of the day, isn't it? Reform. Very vocal for 5 MPs. You see them out yesterday with the farmers. Fantastic support from Farage and Tice. You see them talking about that appalling situation at Manchester Airport where the police were rightly suspended. The 2 Muslim men, it took months, right? They've made more noise, I think, than the rest of them put together. Badenoch, I've heard nothing from her. And I've been saying it repeatedly. I've been told she's away, working out where they went wrong. It's pretty obvious to me. And working out what she needs to say. Today she comes out and she says, anybody that talks about a deal with Farage and Reform UK, that's for the birds. Now, I don't know whether she, a genuine comment here, and I'd love your take, whether she's still of the mindset that as a Tory, as the leader of the most established political party, there's sarcasm before you start texting me, all I've got to do is wait for Labour to mess up a bit more, the opinion polls will turn, and in 5 years, 4 years, I'll be the Prime Minister. Because if that's what she thinks, she's missing what the British people are thinking, which is, right, I think, love your take, the British people have finally gone, we've had 14 years of Tory, then we have Labour, then we have Tory. Do you know what? Actually, you can complain that Farage might have some rough edges like Trump. You can say that Richard Tice this or Rupert Lowe that. Actually, the fact of the matter is, maybe we'd be better off, maybe we wouldn't. But you know what? A bit like Trump, why don't we give somebody else a goddamn chance? Because you know what? It couldn't be any goddamn worse than it is. And I think that's what people think.
You're right, and often through the years we've had a two-party system, and often you get third parties in the periphery that make a lot of noise but then don't end up doing well in the polls. And I think last time the Labour did very well because they essentially weren't the Tories and the Tories imploded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kemi Badenoch is banking on the same strategy, I think, that she is not Labour, they're going to implode and therefore she will be in the ascendancy. The landscape's totally different now because Reform not only are sort of doing well and making all the noise, but they're also doing incredibly well in the polls to the point they've overtaken the Tories. Now, whether or not they can sustain that for the next 4 years, that's question number one. Whether or not they can then get the ground campaign, which they've been lacking in the past, getting grassroots activists knocking on doors and therefore building up momentum and council seats and local elections and then
which
doing well...
Which have been cancelled by the Labour Party anyway.
And then managing to thwart the first past the post system so they can do it. If they manage to do both those things, then this could be existential for the Conservative Party. And I think Kemi Badenoch has realised that. She has actually realised that, but her actions don't seem to match her words. She's identified there's a serious problem coming down the tracks in the form of Nigel Farage, but I think a lot of people in the Tory Party think she could just do a bit more to sort of try and blunt that threat, because at the moment it feels that Nigel Farage and his pals are the ones who are getting all the noise and all the oxygen.
But what they're doing, Farage and his pals, it doesn't wash for Starmer or anybody else to go, oh, far-right rubbish. They are speaking the language that so many traditional Tory voters, and the Sun would know this, Talk would know this, traditional right-of-centre voters, not far-right thugs, by the way, but people who want safe streets, safe borders, low taxation, a strong military, all that stuff that I was brought up on, that has disintegrated in this quest for net zero, or we've got to make sure people don't use hurty words. The problem that Kemi Badenoch is she's trying to please, like I think almost every Tory leader in 1997 since Maastricht, you're too young. There's two wings to the Tory party. There is two wings. Now, Farage has identified that. Jenrick tried to. I think that it will be a long, long way back for the Tory, genuinely for the Tory party. What I suspect will happen is that Farage, there'll be three parties with 200 seats. That's what I think will probably happen. I'd love a difference. I voted Reform last time. I've been very honest about that. But at the end of the day as well, I think they're making one massive mistake, the Tories, if they just think the British public are going to roll over and go, we're coming back to you.
Yeah.
We're not.
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because I think the holy grail for Tory leaders is that coalition which Boris Johnson stitched together in 2019, where he kept on to all of those seats in the south, which the Tories traditionally had, but then also the Red Wall reforms, sort of Red Wall sort of seats, old Labour seats, which Labour won back in the north. That coalition is gone. I don't think you're going to be able to appease both, because Brexit was a real dividing line, and Jeremy Corbyn was a factor which managed to basically unite that coalition.
But Boris Johnson wasn't strong enough, and you never heard me criticise Boris Johnson. He should have done what Trump's done and said, I've got a majority, you can stick it. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, and people blame him for the massive spike in migration which he presided over during his few years in power. I think the problem with Kemi Badenoch now is that clearly she wants to be able to win seats back off Labour, and so therefore she doesn't want to go too far right. But if she goes But then if she does that, then Nigel Farage is going to be laughing because he's going to be eating into all of those votes on the right wing. And so she's basically in this massive bind here, and she's really struggling how to pitch herself to get out of it. The problem as well...
You can't struggle on the job though, mate, can you?
You can't, and she hasn't got long. And the problem as well is that with Nigel Farage, she is coming up against, I think by common consensus, one of the best political orators of the modern age. And he is so good at not only making great speeches at communicating, but also he's mastered social media as well. And he's doing so well to get views on TikTok and sort of new platforms, the type of platforms which over in the US, Donald Trump managed to springboard towards the US.
I want to go to a call. No, he's gone. The caller was there, he's gone. Don't worry about that. Jack, I really appreciate you being on.